Hello everybody, and welcome to Letters from Jen. We are starting a brand new series where we're going to be talking about the blessing of the Lord. Now, it's really important that we understand exactly what the word says the blessing of the Lord is and how we can get it to be part of our everyday lives. Let's get into the Word of God together. Now, the word tells us that God delights to see his children prosper and succeed in life, and that his blessing is on and for those who choose to follow wholeheartedly after him. Deuteronomy 30 verse 19 to 20 says, I call heaven and earth to witness this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, the blessings and the curses. Therefore, choose life that you and your descendants may live, and may love the Lord your God, obey his voice, and cling to him. For he is your life and the length of your days, that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore to give to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is the blessing. In fact, the blessing of the Lord is available to all of his children. And over the next few letters, I want to speak about what the blessing actually is and how we can determine to walk in it ourselves. Now, to begin with, let's take a look at what the Bible claims the blessing of God to be. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for blessing essentially means empowered to prosper. Now, we see God speak this empowering blessing over Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In Genesis 1 verse 28, it says, And God blessed them and said to them, Be fruitful, multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, using all its vast resources in the service of God and man, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves upon the earth. Now, attached to Adam and Eve's blessing was an appropriate instruction. That's because they were blessed for a purpose. They were to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth, to subdue it, and have dominion over every living creature that moved on it. And when God blessed them, he empowered them to prosper and increase and have dominion. Now, later on in the book of Genesis, after the fall of man, God once again speaks a blessing over man, but this time he blesses Abraham. Genesis 12 verse 2 to 3 says, And I will make of you, Abraham, a great nation, and I will bless you with abundant increase of favors, and make your name famous and distinguished, and you will be a blessing, dispensing good to others. Now, God carried on and he said, I will bless those who bless you, who confer prosperity or happiness upon you, and I will curse him who curses or uses insolent language towards you. In you, Abraham, will all the families and the kindred of the earth be blessed, and by you they will bless themselves. Like before, God's blessing came with an empowerment and a purpose. Now, Abraham was empowered to increase and prosper greatly in order to be a blessing to the nations of the world. He was to demonstrate the extravagant goodness and generosity of God in spite of the stark contrast to the lack and poverty that the devil had enforced on people through the famine and plagues and calamity that they were experiencing. Now, no matter where Abraham went and no matter how dismal or barren the circumstances, the blessing of God that was on him caused him to prosper and increase when every odd was against him doing so. Now, the Bible shows how this blessing was passed down from generation to generation, from Abraham to his children. Now, God even blessed Ishmael, but he reserved the same covenant blessing that he had given to Abraham for his son Isaac and Isaac's descendants. In fact, we read about this in Genesis 17 verse 20 to 21, where it says, And as for Ishmael, I have heard and heeded you, and behold, I will bless him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. He will be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant, my promise, my pledge, I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this season next year. And so, this covenant blessing, a purposeful empowerment to prosper, would be passed down Abraham's bloodline in the form of a birthright. It was spoken by the father over his firstborn son. Abraham spoke this birthright blessing over Isaac, who in turn was to speak it over his firstborn son Esau. But that didn't really happen, did it? Nope. Here we see a very interesting twist in history. Esau was the older twin brother of Jacob. Now we read how these two brothers couldn't be more different in looks or nature. Esau was a rough-mannered hunter, while Jacob was more tender-hearted, and he really preferred the comfort of home to the wild outdoors like his brother. Now when the time came for Isaac to bless Esau with his birthright, Jacob, with the help of his mother Rebekah, deceived and tricked Esau and Isaac. He managed to actually steal his brother's birthright from him over a bowl of stew. Well, when all was said and done, there was no turning back. Isaac could not reverse the blessing that he spoke over Jacob, and neither could he speak another blessing over his son Esau. Jacob had succeeded in receiving the covenant blessing through a traditional process that had been passed down from his great-grandfather to his father and now to him. The trouble was, as much as that blessing became increasingly evident in his life, and he prospered and increased in wealth and riches, his heart grew increasingly troubled with unrest. You see, on the outside, Jacob looked every part of the one who had received the blessing of empowerment to prosper. But on the inside, there was a void and emptiness that was eating him alive. And now that is just because Jacob was beginning to recognize that the blessing of the Lord is far deeper than an external wealth. In fact, it falls in step with a heart that seeks after God and His righteousness. In Proverbs 10 verse 22 it says, "The blessing of the Lord, it makes truly rich, and He adds no sorrow with it, neither does toiling increase it." Jacob knew full well that he simply couldn't go any further without making right with the Lord and his brother. The miserable torment that he was feeling inside was actually preventing him from experiencing the true blessing of the Lord in his life. Now this unrest came to a head when he knew that he was about to be reunited with his brother Esau. Now in spite of the blessing being evident on Jacob's life, he was terrified of what his brother would do to him when they met. A little while ago, I read something that Pastor Kevin Davies wrote about this conflict in Jacob's heart. Now, it actually stirred something inside of me that inspired me to write this series. In the church today, so many people are chasing after the blessing. They're so determined to be blessed that they will go to any length to have a man or a woman of God give them the blessing or a formula for it. They long for the empowerment to prosper in health and wealth and riches, believing that that would solve all their problems and fulfill their lives. But that really isn't the true blessing of the Lord at all. Even though prosperity in every area of life is a result or a fruit of the true blessing in our lives, it certainly isn't defined by the terms that people have labeled it to be. And as a result, so many are left chasing after an image of something that simply has no substance to it. They pursue an empty promise of wealth and fame and riches without any character to sustain it. And that is because God's blessing is and has always intended to be an empowerment to prosper from the inside out. It is a lifestyle choice to follow after God with all our hearts and to cling to Him and His ways first. Something that we will see Jacob begin to understand and thrive in the letters to come. But next week, we're going to find the truth about the true blessing of God from the Word itself. We'll discover, as Jacob did, that the true blessing is far deeper than a superficial external display of wealth that is lost as quickly as it's found. So until then, I pray that you will become increasingly unsatisfied with all that is skin deep and not soundly rooted in the truth of who God is and His way of blessing you. Until then, God bless you and goodbye.